Hello, and welcome to a review of the Nikon Nikkor 85mm f2 AI lens, a lens that has received a mixed bag of reviews, so let's see if yet another review can shed some light on this vintage classic. The lens was produced around 1980, meaning it's 40 years old. There were about 90,000 copies made, and they were all made in Japan. It's a Nikkor vintage lens as we know and love them, all metal and glass, but no modern features at all. The weight is around 300 grams, which makes it the lightest 85mm lens from Nikon. You will find that the 1.4 equivalent is double the weight, so many praise the f2 for being light and compact. The focus throw is another feature many notice. It has a long throw of 255 degrees and the feel is silky smooth. If you like manual focus and you get a good copy, this lens will not disappoint you. So what about the price? Obviously, this lens can only be bought used, and consulting eBay, it looks to me like the average price for an okay copy is around $200. Mind you that import taxes and shipping costs may be added on top, subject to where you live. The competition is fierce in the 85mm space, even if you stay with Nikon. The 105 is in terms of weight and price close to the reviewed lens, but provided of course that you like the extra focal range. You can get faster versions of the 85mm with autofocus also, but both the price and the weight is then in a different league. I know that many prefer fast lenses, but I advise you to use a depth of field calculator to see what you get before you add cost and weight to your glass. You may be surprised. The depth of field I show here is calculated with a distance of 2 meters, which I guess is relevant for a portrait lens. So let's get going with the test. I start out with a controlled environment, and you can see here I have tested the lens towards itself at different apertures. To the left I have f2, to the right I have f8. And if we zoom in heavily, meaning 1 to 8, you will see that one of my favorite examples, that is the euro sign down here to the bottom left, that it is much sharper and much better contrast than what you see at f2. Same goes for the center sharpness here, which I guess is vital for a portrait lens. If we go and look at the names of the states here, you can see it's impossible to read here at f2, whereas f8 the lens is doing very well. I think this is some of the sharpest I have actually seen in my tests of lenses in general. So very impressive. Now I don't have that many 85mm lenses to compare this with. So what I did was I took the 28 to 105 zoom lens that I have and put it at 85mm. And as you would expect, the prime makes mincemeat out of the zoom. Again, I think that this shows how sharp this lens actually is. We are at 8 to 1, which is a crazy. And again, if I go down to the euro sign, we see the same. It's soft. The zoom lens, the prime, is very sharp indeed, even though it's at the corner of the frame. And bottom right, I think they're actually doing quite well, both of them. But I would still say that the prime here has the edge in terms of sharpness and being more contrasty. Also, I have compared the Nikon towards the Tokina 100mm, and as you can see here to the right, you have the Tokina. And as it is a lens that is a bit longer, of course it zooms more. But I think many reviews show that the Tokina is a very sharp lens, so let's just see how the Nikon does in comparison. So if we look at the state names here, I would still say that the contrast is better on the Nikon, but the sharpness is maybe roughly the same. Yeah, it's a close race, but I would still say the Nikon, in my humble opinion, wins here. If we look at the Euronote sign here, or again I would say the Nikon has better contrast and better sharpness, but of course the Tokina is doing very well. And here top right, just to vary it a little bit, I would still say that the Nikon, to me, looks like it has better contrast and it is sharper. So very impressive, I think, the sharpness we see out of this 40-year-old lens. So a little bokeh test. Here I'm fully open at f2, as you can see top left here, and the bokeh to me looks nice, but the problem here is that as soon as you stop down just a little bit, then the aperture blades step into the scene and they are not rounded, meaning that you get this square look on your bokeh, and that is actually not my favorite. If I push the light source a little bit further back, I think it would be even more obvious what is going on. You can see here, nice and round, fully open at f2, 2.8. Yeah. So I'm not a big fan of the bokeh here. I push the light source here even further back and it's the same. You know, They look very square to me. If I take the zoom lens we used just before, it has rounded aperture blades. So here, as open as it can be at 85mm, if I walk up and down here, the aperture ladder, you will see the bokeh balls. They stay nice and round. That's the way I like it. Of course, this is a personal preference, but the 85mm does not get the best review from my side when it comes to the bokeh it produces. And finally, a little test of the Sunstars this lens produces. I have an iPhone here on a shelf far away at f2, as you can see top left. There isn't much of a Sunstar, but as soon as we go to just 2.8, a beautiful Sunstar appears, and it stays beautiful, maybe even more beautiful, as I close down the aperture. So definitely, I would say this Sunstar is approved. It is as good as we often see from Nikon, so no complaints in this department. And to wrap up this review, I want to show you some pictures taken with this lens. And top left here you can see the metrics in case you're curious, but I hope actually the picture will speak for themselves. The first thing that struck me with this lens was color rendition. I think it is simply amazing. Normally I don't comment on color rendition because I think it is very subjective and it's difficult to measure, but my impression from working with this lens is that color rendition is extraordinary, to say the least. I'm really amazed when I look at the colors this lens produces, and I hope the pictures speak for themselves. Also the level of detail, you can see here top right, the tiny grains of sand on top of this stone on the beach. You know, amazing details. Colors again, and this actually one of the few times I've seen this flower, this is from my garden, I've seen this flower being reproduced the way that I see it in real life. Truly amazing color rendition. 3D pop is also a feature. It's a little bit difficult to measure also because it's an interaction between the lens and the camera, but I hope you can see that there is sometimes a 3D effect. Colors again, amazing colors here. Maybe not so sharp, but I think this is this is more the photographer than the lens. Again, colors and contrast, sharpness. I mean, it's amazing. Here, level of details again, close up picture here of a piece of wood. Don't worry over here that it says f1.8, it actually is f2, and this is one of the issues I have with this lens, is that you can actually tweak the aperture ring past 2.0 so that the camera thinks it's shooting at 1.8. But also look at the background blur here. I think it looks very nice. And here, maybe what this lens is designed for, portrait. And if we go close, just to give you a feel for the sharpness of this lens, I hope you can see this. You can see the level of detail. It is simply amazing. Again, colors, sharpness, more sharpness, colors and background blur, details, colors and details, contrast, 3D pop, contrast, colors again, colors and detail, details again. And here colors, this is taken on a day where the light was rather flat, but I think the color of the water here is exactly the way that I saw it on that day. So really, again, colors, simply amazing. Details, and here colors. Again, this is a very, very difficult color to catch because it's so pale, and I think the lens once again delivers. So this was the end of the sample pictures. Please use the link in the description to the Flickr album in case you want to study these pictures more closely. Here's the review summarized in a one-pager. I hope it is evident that I am a fan of this lens, and for $200 I consider this amazing value for money. If you don't like manual focus, or if you need a faster lens, then obviously this lens is not for you. But otherwise, I think this lens should be on your shortlist, even if you don't shoot too many portraits. The 85mm focal length has grown on me in the making of this review, and it certainly also helps that the lens is light and compact. You may have missed distortion, vignetting, chromatic aberration and flare control in this review. I consider the first three to be less of an issue, as it is possible to fix in post, and when it comes to flare control, I know that these vintage lenses are not as well coated as a modern lens, and I think it is a precondition for using a vintage lens, just like it is a precondition that, say, vibration reduction is simply not there. Okay, that's it from me. As always, I wish you happy shooting. Take care. Bye bye.